Okay, so in this video we are now going to look at a full system for a home to include to include domestic water supply, hot and cold, and also to provide central heating to a home. What we have here basically is the indirect hot and cold water system, including central heating. Up until this stage we would have looked at in quite a bit of detail the indirect domestic supply system, so learning about hot and cold water to the home, and how the boiler works in tandem with the hot water cylinder. And we've also touched a little bit on central heating, on the one pipe and the two pipe system when you're connecting radiators to the boiler, and the more efficient system being that two pipe system. Alright, so what we have here in front of us is a full system for a home, and this is likely to be kind of getting closer to exam level questions. So as usual, what we have is the ground floor, the first floor, and the attic. We have our appliances here over to the left: kitchen sink, bath, wash hand basin, water closet, toilet that is. Attic cistern upstairs. We have our hot water cylinder here. We have our second attic cistern over here to supply the boiler, and we have a number of radiators in the system. Okay, so if you were to look at this system here, again, quite daunting to look at, a lot of lines, a lot of appliances and so on, but it's important that you would take this one stage at a time. So if you were doing an exam question like this, one step at a time. Start off first of all by drawing all your appliances and your levels, which I've done just for the sake of speed in the video, and then focus on the cold water supply, then focus on the hot water supply, and then focus on the central heating. Alright, that's the best way to approach this. I'm going to just put the heading up here as well in the top corner. So we're talking about the indirect, hot and cold system with central heating. Now, I'll just box that off and we'll start working on it. So my main focus for the next few minutes is simply just cold water supply, indirect cold water supply, by the way, because we know it's a much better system. So I'm going to bring the mains up to the cistern. I'm going to put a direct supply into the kitchen sink and an indirect supply into the appliances. I'm focusing on nothing else, only that for the moment, and we'll take it one step at a time, as we say. Now, just for the sake of handiness, I'm actually going to draw that line up to the attic cistern first. So I'm going to bring my long ruler, bring it straight down, nice and tidy. Blue pen for cold water, up to about there. Smaller ruler then, easier to handle. And I'm just going to put that as my mains supply, and I'm going to put that cold supply into the attic cistern. I just want to include my ball cock valve in the attic cistern to stop it from filling too much. And then we're going to supply our direct cold water into the kitchen sink. I'm going to go a little bit lower with that. Make sure you remember, now you've got space, you want to leave space for your hot pipes as well. So a little bit over to the left there as well. We have that mains supply going in here, and I'm going to just put in main supply here. I'm going to put the valve outside my front gate on the main supply, the valve underneath my kitchen sink on that direct supply, and the valve in front of the cistern as well. Alright, so our main supply goes directly to the kitchen sink. We can drink that water out of the kitchen sink. The rest goes up to the attic cistern. That's stored in the attic cistern, and it is drawn down from the attic cistern, and it indirectly supplies my appliances. So we're just going to take a line across there. As always, we've got that looping over there to show that it's going out past. Now we're going to go to each appliance there. So up into the bathroom or the toilet, we're going to go up into the wash hand basin, and we're going to go up into the bath as well. That's my cold tap. Couple of arrows to supply my indirect water to show which way it's going, all the way up there, coming down out of here and across into each of those appliances. Okay, we'll put a valve there as well. Anywhere, any pipe basically that's going up in or out of the cistern, we're going to have a valve on that also. Alright, now at this point then we're going to talk about the hot water supply. We understand now as well, we all know that the hot water in our homes comes from the hot water cylinder. And we will first of all draw in the immersion. So just, we won't overthink the immersion too much. Just the top of the immersion there, and then just the heating element part of the immersion. We know that heats the water, and we also know that there's a heating coil inside. Now I do all this in pencil first of all. We'll be going over the coil with pen shortly, but the coil is going to come in the top. It's going to work its way around like so. We'll just do 3 or 4 loops. I'll do one more loop there and out there. Now that will be, we'll be working on that with the red and blue pens once we start working on the boiler, but we know the water going in here gets heated by either the immersion or the coil that's going around in there. Okay, so that is that system setup. Right, so just getting that hot water system supply going, we first of all need to get a cold water feed from this cistern. So we need to fill up this tank first of all. That tank, or that cylinder, is filled up by a line which comes from the attic cistern. We'll just draw our valve on that there, and that feeds water into this attic cistern. Right, cold water is fed into this, into this hot water cylinder. Cold water is fed in there, that fills up, and that is heated. Alright, it's heated by either the immersion element or the heating coil of hot water which flows through it. For the moment we're going to just get this hot water supply, so let's assume that that's been heated. Let's get this hot water supply going into each of the appliances. The hot water pipe always comes directly out of the top of your hot water cylinder. So in your hot presses, you'll see a pipe coming straight out of the top. That is the hot water supply to your appliances. We're going to go around each of these pipes. We're going to bring it down nice and low there. We're going to bring it over here around that pipe. We're going to bring it over then to the bath. Get your hot water up there, and we're going to go around that and over up into the wash hand basin as well. So we have the hot water comes up here, over there. It's piped then down into your appliances whenever the tap is turned on. The hot water also needs to have a supply going down into the kitchen sink. Further there. The pipe work will go across. Oops, that needs to go around there. Pipe work will go across there and up into the kitchen sink also. So it also goes down and across there. Now I'm just going to tip a small bit of that because I made a slight mistake on the area there. So the pipe will go down, across and up into there. Now there's an overflow pipe, so basically any surplus of hot water will just be piped up here, and it will just go back into the attic cistern and it will flow back into the system then. So the overflow there is to help with that. So there is basically our indirect cold and hot supply. So we now are going to bring our boiler into play. As we know, the boiler is going to help out with the heating of this water in the hot water cylinder through that coil, but the boiler is also going to heat the water for the radiators in the central heating system. And one of the main pluses of using this system is that we're going to put a second attic cistern in there, and this is going to supply the water to the boiler, and that therefore means that the water that flows through the boiler, that flows through the radiators, that flows through this coil does not come in any way contact with the water that's actually in this cylinder that is supplied to the appliances in the home. So somewhere else in the attic, sometimes it's right beside it, just but for the sake of these schematic diagrams, a little bit over, out of the way, a slightly smaller attic cistern can be drawn, roughly that position, and that attic cistern is filled by also a main supply, and that main supply can be piped over here and up into it, or sometimes that main supply can supply to this cistern and another pipe will come across and supply to that cistern. Because there's going to be so much work with radiators and so on here, all we're going to do up here is show that there is a mains pipe, and we'll just draw it down here, and that sort of indicates that there's a main supply coming up, and it does come down further or across, and it's there supplying water to that. So we're going to write in there main supply. Okay, so the main supply fills up this attic cistern also, and then we have a line comes down, so a pipe comes down from that attic cistern, straight down, and that goes into the bottom of the boiler there, and that water is heated up in the boiler. When that water is hot, extremely hot, it's going to come out, it's going to run up towards the hot water cylinder, wherever that may be in the home, and that is going to go into the coil in the hot water cylinder. In there, just that cold supply is coming down here, and in there. Now, that hot water flows through the coil, so we're going to use our red pipe, our red pen, excuse me, flow through the coil, and when we get to about halfway, or maybe a little bit more through the coil, it starts to cool. So we will just start getting the blue pen out now, work that around, and the cooler water is going to come out at the bottom of the coil. It's going to come down back into the boiler, and that constant loop, that water gets reheated and comes back up here. The boiler is not under too much pressure because it's only a small amount of water that's heating through that loop. That's constantly looping through there. It's only a small amount of water needs to be fed into the boiler that way as well. Now there is an overflow pipe, just like we have an overflow pipe over here, in case there is any surplus of water. Your overflow pipe will run up there, across, down into there, and just goes back into the system. And that is the water heat. So again, the water in the cylinder is being heated by either the coil or the immersion. That coil is a more efficient, less demanding on the system. That's usually what's used. So when the heating is on in your home, that's constantly heating the water. But sometimes if the heating has been off, maybe in the summertime you're not using the heating and you want the quick heating of the oil or of the water, so you can have a shower or a bath or whatever, you might turn on the immersion in that case. Okay. Right, so that concludes basically the whole domestic supply of water to the home, and the heating, the whole lot with the boiler and the coil and the immersion. We're now going to go over and we're going to supply some central heating to this home. Obviously houses can vary, there could be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 radiators in a home. We're going to put just 2 radiators downstairs and 2 radiators upstairs. So roughly in this position and roughly in this size, we're going to draw 4 rectangles, 2 downstairs and 2 upstairs. So we'll keep the 4 of them the same size where possible. A little bit off the ground, about that size. There. So we'll try to keep them around the same size. Just for neatness in the whole thing. And we'll label those with a black pen. Radiator. Okay, so we are going to supply a 2-pipe system into this. So just look at our original drawing here again. So the hot water in the boiler, it's fed down from there, it goes in here, it's heated up. Some of the hot water goes out to the cylinder, some also hot water goes down and supplies hot water to the radiators. So let's focus on downstairs for the moment, right? So we're going to take a hot line down and feed the 2 downstairs radiators. So again, we'll try and avoid too much confusion. We'll try and avoid overcomplicating it by taking one step at a time. So hot water out of here, around that pipe. We'll bring it to around there. We'll bring it straight down. And make sure you leave room for that second pipe. So I'm going to go to around there. The coil pipe's going to go down beneath that. And we're going to have a hot supply going in there and a hot supply going in there. That hot supply heats up this radiator, that hot supply heats up this radiator, the slightly cooler water comes out, and that basically feeds back into the cold supply there. The cooler water comes out of this, it comes down around that pipe and in there, and that is basically the downstairs radiators done. So let's follow that with some arrows. Hot water here comes down up into the radiator, comes out cold, but it goes back into the system there, goes up into that radiator, comes out cold and goes back into the system there. Alright, now same thing upstairs. This hot water comes out, it goes down for downstairs, but it's also going to be pumped upstairs as well. Alright, so roughly to about that height, we'll take a line and supply that hot water to the first radiator in there, the second radiator in there. That hot water comes up, across there, into each of those. It comes out colder. We'll just take this down to there. And that is going to run across here, around that pipe, and we're going to bring it down and back into the cold supply there, into the boiler. But before I do that, we need to take the cold water out of the other side of the radiator, down there, and that's going to show us the direction of the water there. So we're going to bring this down here, around that pipe, and that's going to go back into that cold supply, and that's pretty much it. So at that point we're getting a lot of lines, it starts to get a bit more confusing, but we can see the 2-pipe system working. So for downstairs, hot water straight in there, cooler water back into the system, back into the system. Same upstairs, hot water straight in there, cooler water back into the system and back into the system. And that essentially has us the full indirect hot and cold domestic water supply, and also the central heating system.